Hi guys, this is Pro MMA Betting. This is the first time we've actually done a podcast with regards to breakdowns for UFC fights. It's going to be something I hope to do on a regular basis from here on out, so please tune in on a weekly basis, check out the videos we're doing. Just a little background information on ourselves. We're professional MMA bettors or tipsters. We also bet on boxing, the only two sports that we bet on or provide tips on. We've been doing it many years now. We've been very successful at betting on those two sports, so we make sure we just stick to those two sports when providing our tips. Lots and lots of knowledge, and hopefully you're going to see that from the breakdowns we provide. You can find me on Twitter at Pro MMA Betting, and also the website is prommabetting.com. If you have a look on there, you can see all the packages we offer. We offer a weekly, monthly, 6-monthly and annual subscription, so you can sign up and get our fight picks on a weekly basis. We bet on a number of organisations: UFC, Bellator, Cage Warriors, predominantly them three, and also boxing on a pretty much a weekly basis as well. You'll get the tips throughout the week on email. You'll get breakdowns for each bet and why we've made that bet. So hopefully you have a successful time betting with us and make lots of money like we have over the years. But to move away from that, I want to talk about the upcoming weekend. We've got two UFCs this weekend, one on Friday, one on Saturday. So there's going to be 24, 25, 26 fights maybe. So I'm not going to break down every single fight for the two cards. I haven't had the time to go through tape on every single one of them. Some of the fights we don't know yet as well, because it's going to be the TUF Finals. But we're going to go through most of the fights. There's some that maybe I haven't watched tape on that I will, from memory, have a little conversation about, but I won't go too deep on them ones. I'm just going to go mainly with the ones that I have actually done the tape on. The fight orders don't seem to have been listed official yet, so I'm just going to go off what the order is on the UFC website. So if we start with the TUF Finale, which is on Friday night, the first fight that the UFC has listed is Barcelos against Chris Gutierrez. I did do tape on this one. Obviously Barcelos made a great impression on his debut. Really tore apart Kurt. Very tight boxing on the inside, excellent combinations. He also used some really fancy reactive double legs, very fast, very explosive. Hit a nice outside trip as well on Kurt when he moved in. Looked like he was going to throw some punches and he just swept his leg away. It was a really nice takedown, but he really did look the part on his debut. Really tore Kurt apart, and Kurt's a good fighter. My hesitation here is he is moving down to 135. I'm not sure why he's doing that. I mean, obviously he's trying to gain an advantage on the size because he isn't the biggest featherweight. But there's different information on his age. Tapology has him as 33. Sherdog has him as 31. So, I mean, either way, he's not the youngest fighter out there. So it's quite unusual that he's making the decision to make this cut at this quite a late stage in his career. I mean, he's not had many fights. He's only had 13 fights, so he's young in terms of mileage, but still cutting down 10 pounds. How's the cut going to go? Is his chin going to be the same? I mean, from looking at the frame on him, I don't think that the cut's going to be a major killer, but is it going to affect his speed? So it kind of put me off the bet. I mean, the money line on the betting odds is very high as well. I don't really feel confident enough to take him at that price. Chris Gutierrez is a solid fighter. I did some tape on him. If I just have a look at his record, I watched his fights with Valiev. Valiev's a wrestler, so he's going to get a different stylistic matchup here with Barcelos. Barcelos is going to stand with him, although as we saw against Kurt, he did mix in takedowns, so there may be that threat as well. But I do expect predominantly a striking battle here. I also saw, I couldn't find the Jared Sanders loss. I imagine he got wrestled in that fight. Sanders is a wrestler. I did watch a Jimmy Flick fight. Pretty much just volumed him from the outside, picked away at him, and eventually got the stoppage with, I think it was a calf kick. His last fight, Ray Rodriguez, I found highlights of it. You don't really see too much. You just see the ending. I think he got the rear naked choke off of a foul takedown attempt from Rodriguez. What I did glean from the tape that was available is, I mean, he's definitely a solid fighter, Chris. He's got good stand up, pretty low volume though, single shots as well. So I mean, I have to go with Barcelos here. Just based on that debut and how impressive he looked. Barcelos is hittable. Kurt, when I rewatched the fight, Kurt did have a lot more success than I had from memory. So he is hittable. Moving down 10 pounds, is his chin going to be okay? I mean, it probably is. But Gutierrez's volume is a worry for me here. I just don't think he's got the volume to win a decision over Barcelos. So then you're looking at, he's got to stop him. He has stopped half of his opponents, but the quality for Gutierrez, I mean, it is questionable. Valuev's a name I recognise. He's fought Bendy Casimir, who I believe is a French fighter. It's been around a long time now. I remember him from my early days of first getting into MMA. He fought some guys on the British MMA scene. So that's an old guy there he's fought. Jimmy Flick, I mean, Jimmy Flick didn't look great in that fight. So it's a big step up, but we've seen so many times now how guys have come into the UFC from one of the more regional shows and really stepped up their game and looked great. So there's no reason why he can't, but he is potentially being thrown to the wolves here. This is going to be a tough fight for him. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I've got to go with Barcelos. I think his stand-up is going to be too much. If he can throw in the takedowns as well, like he did in his first fight, it'll make things interesting. Mixing it up, Chris is not going to know what's coming. Strikes, takedowns. So I'm going to go for Barcelos here, but it's going to be interesting to see how he looks at 135. So an intriguing fight. As a bettor, I'm going to stay away from it, especially with that wide line. It may be worth looking at a decision line on Barcelos when it's available. Is it out now? Let's have a look. Barcelos decision is plus 195, so maybe worth a look from a betting perspective. Maybe. I don't really know how. I mean, Gutierrez has never been stopped in his 3 losses, all decision losses. But Barcelos is probably the most dangerous guy he's fought in terms of finishing ability. So yeah, it's a pass for me on a betting angle at that line. But before the lines came out, I was hoping for the line to be a bit closer. But I didn't realise he was moving down either. So now I know that, it's definitely kind of put me off. I want to see how he looks at 135. Next up, we've got Tim Means, the Dirty Bird, taking on Ricky Rainey. I like Tim Means. I think he's a solid fighter. He's been around the UFC. It's his second stint in the UFC, I believe. I like him a lot, but I can't trust him. The betting line here as well is quite wide, which puts me off. But I just can't trust the guy. I don't know if he's regressing. He's 34 now. He's had a lot of fights. He's had nearly 40 fights now. He got absolutely robbed in Brazil against Sergio Morales. That was a terrible decision. He should have got that decision. I think he was paid his win bonus. That's how bad the decision was. He lost to Bilal Muhammad before that, split decision. It was a close fight. I can see maybe why it was a split, but I did think Bilal done enough to win that. But it was a close fight. Alex Garcia, I remember I bet on him against Alex Garcia, and I remember the first round was a bit of a worry. I think he dropped the first round from memory. I think he got stung as well. I mean, Alex does hit hard. And then before that, he had the 2 fights with Alex Oliveira, the first one where he looked great and then he threw the illegal strike, so it was a no contest. It should have been disqualified. I bet on him in that fight, in fact, so I was very relieved it was a no contest. So I got my money back. I didn't bet on him in the rematch because I remember the betting line was really off. I didn't think the first fight was as one-sided as everyone seems to be making out and how the betting line reflected. And he said he broke his foot and it kind of took his concentration away. He was in a lot of pain in the fight, but he got subbed there. I just don't know where Tim Means is at the moment. He's probably fighting for his job as well here. So, I mean, he should beat Ricky Rainey. I wasn't overly familiar with Ricky. I remember his fight with MVP, him getting stopped in the first round. So I went back and watched his fights with Mark Stevens, and I rewatched his UFC fight. I mean, he's long and rangy. He's got, I mean, you see differing readings on his reach, but apparently his reach is 80 inches, which is massive for a welterweight. But I think he's a bit chinny. I definitely think he's a bit chinny. I mean, Muslim and MVP both hit hard, although I'd argue maybe MVP is more about timing than power. But he got knocked out with one punch from both of them. He seems to be okay moving forward. He's got those long limbs, but I don't like him defensively. I mean, Tim Means should be able to take him out here. Tim needs to get back to what he had his success with, which is using all the facets that he has, his elbows, his fists, his knees and his kicks. Seems to have gotten away from his elbows a little bit in recent fights, so I'd like to see him really get back, but like I said, I don't know where he's at. I really don't, but I do favour him against Ricky, who didn't really blow me away on tape, to be honest. He's 35 as well. I can't see him going far in the UFC. I think he's going to lose this fight and get cut, but Tim Means is just a hard guy for me to trust, based on his recent run. I mean, when you look at his record, who is Tim's best win over as well? I mean, Alex Garcia isn't great, is he? Sabah Hamasi isn't great. John Howard, you know, there isn't really a win there that catches your eye, but not that it needs to be for him to beat this guy Ricky Rainey. I think I'm just thinking more ahead to what do I do if Tim gets another step up. Is probably swerve the fucking fight, which I'm going to do with this one. But I do expect Tim to get the job done. He should finish him as well. I want to see Tim really getting back to that nasty streak, using them elbows, going for the finish. His killer instinct seems to have disappeared a little bit. I mean, his takedown defense looks fantastic now. Against Alex Garcia, he looked great defending takedowns. He's not going to have to worry too much about that here with Ricky. I expect this is going to be a stand-up fight. Ricky might try some clinching, but Tim's dangerous in the clinch with them elbows. So, yeah, I'm going to go Tim, but I need that man to bring some trust back before I consider betting him again. So I won't be betting him. The line is, I mean, it's probably about right. I think it's about minus 350 at the moment. It's probably right if you want to put your faith in Tim, but I don't. I'd need the line to be a lot shorter to consider betting him. So we're going to go Tim Means, but that's one that I'm looking for a really solid performance from Tim. Moving on to the next fight, we have Roosevelt Roberts v Daryl Hulcher. This is one that I'm just going to quickly cover. The only tape I could find on Roosevelt, besides some amateur fights years ago, was his Dana White Contender Series fight. He looked great. I don't know anything about the opposition he was facing though. The guy didn't look great. I think he had an 11-7 record. I can't read too much into it. Daryl Hulcher, he isn't the greatest fighter. He had a horrific motorcycle accident. I mean, he's done well to even survive, let alone get back in the cage. So fair play to the guy. But I really can't even call this fight because there just isn't enough information on Roosevelt Roberts. Daryl obviously had a horrible debut. He took Khabib on. I think it was on really short notice. Got wrecked. Then he had the motorcycle accident. He was only out for just over a year actually. Wow, he did come back quick. What a recovery. As I remember reading about the injuries he suffered, it was horrific. His first fight back was Devin Powell. We know how bad Devin is. I mean, Jesus, if you can't beat Devin, you don't belong in the UFC. It's a split decision on his record, but that was bullshit. It was a clear, unanimous decision win. Then he fought Scott Holtzman, lost the decision to Scott. I remember Scott just kept hitting him with the same inside trip over and over, and he was just going down. So he does hit pretty hard, Holcher. I remember he was stinging Devin Powell, who for all his faults is pretty tough. But yeah, it's a fight I've just got to avoid completely. There isn't enough tape on Roosevelt Roberts. His odds now are, let's have a look, he's a minus 300 favourite. I think people are just fading Daryl Holcher here and going for the kind of new kid on the block, but I don't know how you could be betting him at minus 300 when there's so little tape on him. I'm not even making a prediction for this fight. Holcher's tough, so goes a distance maybe, but I'd completely swerve it from a betting perspective, and no clue who wins. But I will be interested to see how Roosevelt does. Is he a kind of up and comer? We'll find that in this fight, because Holcher's not a mug. But if Roosevelt has any aspirations of hanging around in the UFC, then it's a fight he needs to win and probably look quite impressive. So it'll be an interesting one. So next fight is Joe Benavidez and Alex Perez. So this is a very interesting fight. Alex Perez looks like a beast. If we look at his last few fights, he has destroyed Jose Torres, who, I mean, Torres blocks punches with his face every fight, but no one's done that to him. Absolutely annihilated him. Great performance there. Looks solid as hell. Before that, he beat Eric Shelton. I don't think Eric's great, but he's an awkward guy. He's not the easiest to look best against, and Perez just shut him down completely. I think he out-wrestled him pretty comfortably. He looks real big for the weight class. He's very thick for a 125er. This fight is at 125, which is interesting, as it looks like the 125 division is going. So, but he's probably someone that can move up to 135 and still have success. Fights before that, I bet him in his debut against Carl's John De Thomas. And yeah, the guy's not very good, but he'd run through him, and he looked really good on a Dana White Contender Series, which is why I bet him. I mean, it only lasted 3 minutes against Kevin Gray, but again, totally annihilated him. So we've had 2 annihilations. Eric Shelton fight, very comfortable, 30-27, and then another annihilation, Jose Torres. So, I mean, this guy does look good from what we've seen so far. He's only 26 as well. But this is a tough fight against Joe Benavidez. Joe's last fight was his first fight back in around 18 months, coming off that knee surgery, really serious knee surgery. I can't remember the ins and outs of the surgery, but it was quite serious, the surgery that he had. Against Sergio, he struggled for takedowns. Was he shaking off the ring rust, having been out for 18 months? Is he slowing down? The problem with being at 125 is you need your reflexes. That's what makes the fighters great at that weight class. It's how quick they are, how quick their reflexes are, and that does affect you more so in the lower weight classes than the older weight classes at an earlier age. Has he lost a bit of his speed? Potentially, yes. He didn't look great in that Sergio fight. This is one that I haven't had a chance to re-watch yet, but I do remember I nearly bet Benavidez against Sergio, but I put the brakes on because of the layoff, and is he going to be coming out of his athletic prime? I mean, he didn't look great in that fight. I mean, before the Sergio fight, the guy's only lost to Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson, 2 of the best fighters the division's ever seen. So until then, he'd never lost to anyone bar them 2, which shows you how high quality the guy is. I'm not sure where he's done his camp this time. He done his last camp at the UFC Performance Institute, which I really not liking guys that do their camps there. I mean, I can't remember everyone that's done their camp there, but they don't seem to have a great success rate there. I'm not really sure how the training's formulated there or carried out. So this is a tough one to call. I think the line's about even, or Perez slight favourite. Yeah, Perez is -125. I think the line's about right. Perez looks like the shrieking up and comer. Benavidez possibly on the way out, but this fight will tell us where Benavidez is at. He is 34 now. You know, he's getting up there in age for a flyweight, so it's going to be interesting to see how he looks here against Perez. I think I've probably got to go Perez. I've got to go with a new kid on the block, especially based on Benavidez' last performance. But you know, 2 years ago he gave Henry Cejudo a great fight. It was so close, could have gone either way. But in that time he's had the knee surgery. He's 2 years older. He's a flyweight. He's 34. All these things are going against him now. So I think it's going to be a competitive fight. But I see Perez eking out a decision here, and this will really announce Perez on the contender stage, albeit we don't know what's happening with a 125 division. I think it's going, so he's going to have to move up, which is a shame for him because he was putting himself in contention, especially with a win here. But yeah, really interesting fight. So I think the odds are about right. I think we've got to give Joe B respect still. I mean, Sergio's not a bad fighter to lose to. Maybe he was shaken off the ring rust and he'll come back here and look like the old Joe B. But I think potentially his shelf life is running out, and the new kid on the block is maybe going to just squeak past him here. But it's going to be an interesting one. Really good fight. Looking forward to that one. Next is Rick Glenn against Kevin Aguilar. This is one I'm not going to talk about. I haven't done any tape on Aguilar. I didn't see his Dana White Contender Series fight. I've heard that he didn't look great in that fight, but he did look good prior to that performance in other fights. So no idea here because I haven't looked at Aguilar. Rick Glenn isn't the kind of guy I like to bet against unless he's facing someone who is on a different realm to him athletically, which isn't hard, but he's got a great pressure style. He is slow, he is hittable, but he's going to be in your face. If you don't get rid of him, he's going to make life a misery for you. So interesting fight, but it's one I'm not going to talk about because I haven't watched tape on Aguilar. But Rick Glenn, from a betting perspective, he will fight for your money, but he is slow as molasses. So it's he's a funny one to bet on. It's very much how he fares stylistically against the opponent. But as I said, I can't talk about that here because I don't know anything about Aguilar. First women's fight of the weekend, so it's Ji Yong Kim against Antonina Shevchenko. So I've done tape on Antonina. I remember doing tape on her before her Dana White Contender Series debut, and I re-went over it for this card as well. As you'd expect, she looks like she's got very solid stand-up, kind of similar style to her sister. It's quite low volume, but you can tell especially for a lady, her stand-up is really, really sharp. She absolutely destroyed the lady she fought on the Contender Series. I mean, to be fair, she was completely overmatched, but it was a beat down from the clinch. Thai Plum, she absolutely wrecked her. She did get taken down in that fight, so the concern is her takedown defense and her ground game. Her stand up, it looks solid, but looking back at her previous fights, and I watched her fight against Valerie de Mergu in Phoenix Fighting Championships, and yeah, she just dominated her on the feet pretty much. Fights at range quite well, fights long, nice stand up, doesn't really have any power, it seems. She had Valerie hurt, I think, in round 3, but she couldn't finish her. She obviously finished the girl on Dana White Contender Series from the Thai Plum, but it was just a complete mismatch. She shouldn't have been in there with her. It was embarrassing, really. But yeah, her standard of opposition's been pretty poor, so it's hard for me to quite know how good she's going to be. She's quite old as well. She's 34, so she's transitioning across at quite an old age. She did make her MMA debut back in 2002. She had one fight in 2003 and one in 2005, and then there's a 12-year gap. I know she's been working in the Muay Thai, K1, kickboxing fields, and I don't know what her accolades are, but I think she was world champion and so forth. So she's obviously got great pedigree stand-up wise, but she's fighting Kim, who, for all her faults, she has fought at a higher level. This will be her fourth fight in the UFC. She's fought Pudilova, Justine Kish, and Melinda Fabian. So it's going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be a stand-up fight. Kim doesn't go for takedowns. She's just going to stand there and bang with her. Antonina should outstrike her, but like I said, because I haven't seen her face anyone half decent, you know, anyone can look good beating up trash cans. It's not difficult. So for me, it's one that before I done tape, I did think that I'd put Shevchenko in a potential parlay. But after tape, I can't do it just because the quality of opposition's been so poor. And Kim isn't terrible. You know, she's game. She has throw hands. She's tough to get rid of. This fight's probably going to go to a decision. Someone notified me just before I started recording this that it's probably going to be the small cage. I don't know if that's really going to make a difference in this fight. For the main event, definitely. For this fight, probably not. They're just going to stand there and bang. I don't think Shevchenko's got the power. From watching her fights previously, she didn't really use the Thai plum. It was only in that Dana White Contender Series fight that I saw the Thai plum, but I only watched Shevchenko's fight prior to the Contender Series, and she didn't use the Thai plum in that fight. So I don't know. You know, Kim's taller, so it's going to be harder for her to get into the Thai. Actually, looking at the stats, Shevchenko's an inch taller. I thought Kim was really lanky and tall, but she's not as tall as I thought. So actually Shevchenko, but they're similar height, so it's going to be harder for her to dominate the Thai plum like she did. It's always easier against a shorter opponent to take that Thai plum and dominate and control. So it's an interesting fight. I'm interested to see how good Shevchenko is, because this fight will tell us. If she runs away with a 30-27, you know she's really good. Kim, I mean, isn't the best. I thought she lost to Justine Kish. I thought that was a really bad decision, but she is game. So yeah, I mean, her 3 UFC fights have all been really close. You could argue she beat Pudilova. So she's been in close fights so far. So it'd be interesting this will give us an indication as to what kind of level Antonina's at and whether she's likely to make a run for the title here. I mean, gut instinct would say she probably is going to, but I just need to see her perform against someone half decent so we can really get an understanding of where she's at, basically. So yeah, I like Shevchenko here, but it's going to be interesting to see what level she is at. Next up, we've got Darren Stewart, the dentist, versus Edmund Shabazian. This is a tough fight to make a real informed decision on, basically because Edmund, who trains with Edmund, who we all know from Ronda Rousey and Travis Brown's UFC days, a guy that gets quite a lot of stick. He's had 7 fights, 7 wins, all inside the distance. He's only 21. He's never been past 3 minutes 16 seconds of round 1. His last 2 fights, his last fight was 40 seconds, before that 30 seconds. You just can't get a handle on how good this kid is just because he just hasn't been in there against, well, anybody decent. I mean, the guy he fought on the Contender Series, I think his record was okay. He absolutely smashed him. Antonio Jones, have a look. So he was 7-1. Had he fought anyone? 33 years of age. He beat Roger Navas by decision. Roger used to be in the UFC. I remember he lost to Pat Cummins. It's the only name I recognise on his record. But you know, Roger, he wasn't very good. But to have a decision over him, the guy's not a complete mug. But yeah, he got completely blown away on the Contender Series by Edmund, 40 seconds. So he's obviously dangerous with his hands. He comes from that Glendale Fight Club, so he's going to be boxing heavy. He's dangerous. He's definitely dangerous. But the dentist from London, same as me, Darren Stewart, he is a gamer. Tough as they come. Really tough to finish. You can't break the guy's spirit in there. He started out in the UFC at 205 when he fought Barroso, lost the decision. He had the fight in Brazil with him initially that was weird. Barroso, I can't remember now, said he bit his jaw from a headbutt or something, so it was a no contest. They rematched I think it was in London. He lost that fight, then he moved down to 125. Carl Robertson just took him down and choked him out. Then he fought Julian Marquez. I bet Marquez in that fight, and it was a horrible fight to have a bet on because Darren Stewart brought it. It wasn't until he gassed out that Marquez took over, but it was a hell of a scrap, and you really saw Darren Stewart's heart and tenacity in that fight. And then since then he's gone on a roll. He's knocked out Eric Spicely. I know Spicely's not the best, but put him away. And then Charles Bird, he was losing handsomely too, and then he came back in the second round and totally took Charles Bird out. So this is a tough fight to call. You've got to think, if I was coming into this fight and I was in Darren Stewart's corner, I'd want him to, I mean, not change anything he does really, but survive round one, get this guy into round two. Darren brings a high pace. Good chance that this Edmund, 21 years of age, he's never been into round two. There's a good chance this guy's going to gas. And the likelihood is as well, Edmund, where he's so young, he might not be too composed. He might go all out in round one. Darren can survive. I think it's his fight round 2 and 3 onwards. It's a really hard fight to be confident in just because of the unknowns with Edmund. I mean, it wasn't long ago that everyone was kind of giving Darren Stewart a real hard time. He was lucky to get another fight in the UFC. Lost his first 3 fights. Not many people get a 4th crack at the whip, but he's entertaining, so I guess that's why he got another go. And he's rewarded them 2 round 2 knockouts in a row. I wouldn't be surprised if he got another round 2 knockout here. So I'm going to go with Darren. I think he can survive round 1, drag this guy into deep waters, and potentially put him away in round 2. But it's a very tough one to call just because we haven't seen Edmund past 3 minutes. I mean, you cannot be confident in this fight no matter what based on that. But Darren is one tenacious, tough, gritty guy, and he will fight for your money as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets knocked out in round 1, but I'm going to side with Darren here. He's had 5 UFC fights now. He's 6'1". He's going to be comfortable in there. Edmund, first time under the bright lights, young age. What's his composure like? How well is he going to deal with adversity? Which I'm assuming he's never faced in any of his fights. So yeah, real interesting fight this one. And I like the dentist to completely turn his UFC career around and go from 0-3 to 3-3. The TUF Finale fight is on there as well. I think it's the heavyweight fight. Espino versus Fraser. I haven't watched the Ultimate Fighter this season, so I have no clue. All I know is it's heavyweights, it's low level. From a betting perspective, that always screams pass to me. But I have no clue on either fighter, so don't listen to my advice on that one and have a look at the tape. But yeah, it's a complete pass for me. So 2 fights left. So we've got Pedro Munoz versus Brian Caraway. Now this is a really interesting fight. I really like Pedro. I like his style. Very aggressive fighter. Lots of forward pressure. He's got nasty calf kicks. Used them really well in his last fight against Brett Johns. He's used them in previous fights as well. I think he was hitting them on Rob Font. I remember he was hitting, I think, Stasiak with them as well. So it's not something that's was the first time we've seen it against Brett Johns. We have seen it in prior fights. So he's got a nasty guillotine if you shoot on him. He hurt Rob Font on the feet. Rob Font shot the worst thing he could have done, and instant guillotine. It's a bit of a quick tap from Rob. I think he panic tapped, to be honest, but the guy's guillotine is dangerous. He kept dropping for it against Brett Johns when he had Brett Johns hurt on the feet. He couldn't snatch it up, but we've seen him hit it in other fights as well. He hit it on Justin Scoggins. He was getting struck, and then Scoggins slipped, bang, guillotine, game over. Hit a lovely armbar on Russell Doan. Transitioned from, if I remember rightly, they was like standing, and he kind of transitioned to his back, got him down, and hit the armbar. Really, really nice. He's a dangerous guy, Pedro. That forward pressure, really good cardio, nasty calf kicks, as I said, nasty guillotine, really good chin as well. Yeah, I really like him. But Brian Caraway is someone that's always underestimated. This guy's tenacious, he's gritty. His stand-up isn't great, but he'll throw single shots. And he'll keep coming. He gave Cody Stamann a really close fight. Could have gone either way. So from doing the tape on both these, this is a question of, can Caraway get Pedro down, and can he keep Pedro down if he does? It's a really hard question to answer because we haven't seen Pedro on his back since his UFC debut against Rafael Assunção. I think Rafael got 3 takedowns in that fight. One of them he was held down for, it was a minute and a half till the end of the round. Another one he got up quickly from, I think he threatened with a heel hook, managed to get up quick. And then the other one he was taken down with about 30 seconds left in round 3. So we don't know what his get-ups are like. We know he's got a really decorated grappling game. I think he was 2-time Nogi national champion in Brazil, won state titles as well. He's a black belt in BJJ. I know everyone is in this day and age, but I think he is a genuine kind of BJJ black belt. I don't think that's no McDojo black belt that's been gifted to him there. I think he is genuinely really sharp on the feet and on the ground, and we've really seen how handy he is with that guillotine. So can Caraway get him down? Can he keep him down? Potentially, but the other problem is we haven't even really seen Pedro's takedown defence tested too much since Assunção. If you look at his record, I went through all his fights. Jimmy Rivera, I remember he stuffed a Jimmy Rivera shot. Another Jimmy Rivera takedown. Jimmy lifted him up, but he threatened with a guillotine, so he dropped him. And then we just haven't seen it. Damian Stasiak attempted a lot of takedowns that were all stuffed, but it's Damian Stasiak. You can't read too much into that. Rob Font obviously tried a takedown after he got rocked on the feet. John Dodson didn't. Brett Johns, I think, tried a few, but got easily stuffed. Caraway's easily the best takedown threat he's faced since Assunção. So it is really hard to read in that degree. Brian obviously took apart Aljamain with takedowns and top control after a tough first round. He outstruck Eddie Wineland, which is interesting, but I think Eddie was coming back from his second broken jaw. I think that made him cautious. I think he was probably a little bit cautious as well with regards to the takedown threat, because you don't want Caraway on top of you. He is really good on top. So can Brian Caraway get Pedro down and keep him down? On the feet, I think it's Pedro all day. Pedro's defence isn't very good. He's easy to hit, but he's happy to be there in the pocket, exchanging. He throws high volume. Caraway's more single shots. He's got some pop to his punches as well, Pedro. He obviously hurt Rob Font. He also we hurt Brett Johns with the calf kicks, but he also hurt him a couple of times to the body with body kicks. And he also hurt Matt Hobar as well. And there was someone else that he hurt on the feet. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, he's got a bit of spite to his punches. He's got that guillotine threat. He's got those nasty kicks. I've got to side with Pedro here, just purely based on the threat he offers standing. He does have that guillotine threat off the takedown, but Caraway's a really good grappler, so it's going to be hard to catch Caraway in that guillotine. But he's the more well-rounded fighter, so I've got to go with him. I know Caraway has a big weight cut as well to make 135. I think he's 34 now. I've seen him slow down, Caraway, in a couple of fights. I think his pace dropped against I think Assunção, his pace dropped in that fight. Definitely saw his pace drop there. Cody Stamann, he was okay. He done well in round 3, but Cody Stamann doesn't really push the pace. Pedro's going to be pushing a higher pace, so I think we could see him slow down. But I could definitely see it being a close fight, and I wouldn't be shocked if Caraway snatched a split decision just through takedowns and top control, because this is the big unknown. But just purely based on being more well-rounded, I've got to go with Pedro here. So I'll go Pedro, but it's an interesting fight. The line maybe should be a little bit closer than it currently is, but yeah, we'll go for Pedro on this one. Then we move to the main event. So we've got Rafael dos Anjos against Kamaru Usman. So really interesting fight, because we've seen dos Anjos face a similar opponent in his last fight in Colby Covington. I'll rewatch that one today. Rafael just couldn't deal with the pressure that Colby brought. I mean, cardio was insane, just on him for 5 rounds, constantly pushing him back. What I didn't like from Rafael was he kept backing up straight into the fence. He wasn't circling, moving side to side. Just kept getting backed up continually. And I think this is going to be in the small cage, which, as I said earlier, someone notified me just before I started recording this, and that's going to be horrible for Rafael, and even smaller cage. Usman is similar to Colby in that he does bring forward pressure. He doesn't bring the volume. I don't think he's got the gas tank either to kind of stick to him like glue like Colby did, and his chain wrestling isn't as good, but he is more powerful. He does hit harder as well. Rafael was having to throw a lot moving backwards, and he did land some good shots on Colby, but he was getting caught a lot as well because he was moving back. He was worrying about the takedown. He's going to have the same here, and Usman's an even bigger guy. Like I said, I don't think he can match the pace. So does he wear down? If you're dos Anjos, you've got to hope the guy slows down, and we haven't really seen it in any of his fights. And you look at Usman's record. He went 5 with Maia. I mean, it wasn't the best performance, but I think he just played it safe just in case he did get taken down, because round 1 was quite interesting. He got caught in a body lock, and the whizzer saved him, and they was in the same position for a couple of minutes, and then the ref made a really bad call and separated them. Shouldn't have been separated from that position, so it would have been interesting to see what happened if Usman lost that whizzer, but he's so strong, it wouldn't surprise me if he just managed to hold on until the round ended. But against Emil Meek, he didn't like. Meek's a big guy though at welterweight. Rafael, as we know, he's kind of campaigned at lightweight. He's probably best at 165. Welterweight's maybe a little bit too big for him. But he didn't look great against Meek. This is when after the fight he said he was only 30% or some bullshit. So maybe he was injured and not 100%. Like, who knows? But Meek's pressure did give him some problems. Sergio Moraes was. I mean, Sergio's actually genuinely a tough guy to look good against, because he's very unorthodox, throws awkward hooks, but Usman ate a few shots and then knocked him out. So you can't take too much away from Usman there. Against Sean Strickland, I think the cut really affected Strickland, but he still got dominated in round 1 before the cut occurred. So that was a really good performance. Wally Alves, he just broke him with pressure. As we all know, Wally Alves gasses. Usman just kept it on the feet, was wary of the guillotine threat, broke him basically, broke him down completely, dismantled him. Yakovlev fight was brutal beating. Leon Edwards gave him a good fight. Leon's got really good takedown defence. Usman kind of managed to basically hug him on the fence a lot, and he did get takedowns. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see how this fight kind of unfolds, because, as I said, I think it's a smaller cage. I just don't see how Rafael's going to stay off the fence. I really don't. His footwork wasn't good enough against Colby. We're a few months further on. Rafael's 34 now. I can't see how he's going to have made strides big enough on the feet at his age in such a short time to be able to keep himself off the fence. I can see him being held on the fence a lot. I can see Usman getting some takedowns. I'm not sure how good Usman's top control is. I watched his last 5 fights today, and he didn't really hold anyone down. He kept Worley down in round 3, but Worley had gassed by then. Sean Strickland, I think, got up a few occasions. Meek got up a few times. I mean, he dragged them back down, but and then Damian Murray avoided the ground. Now Raphael got up every time against Colby. Colby couldn't keep him down. I'm not sure how many takedowns Colby hit in that fight, but I think it was quite a lot, and he did keep getting up. So I just think the pressure, the sustained pressure, it's not going to be as tenacious and stick to him like glue as Colby was, but he is a bigger man. He's going to be leaning on Raphael. There's going to be more weight, more strength there. It's a smaller cage. I went into this thinking that Usman was going to win, but it might be close. I started doing the tape and I was thinking, yeah, this could be a close fight. But while I'm thinking out loud now, I just don't see Raphael winning this fight. I really don't. He's not a big puncher. You know, he's got 5 knockout wins in his whole career, and he's had 40 fights. So I can't see him. We've never seen Usman hurt on the feet. I don't think, or did he get hurt in his first UFC fight against Hader? I might be lying there, but I'm sure I've got a recollection that he got rocked in that fight. But regardless, we haven't seen him hurt since. I just don't see how he's going to keep him off. I just don't think he's got the power to keep him off. He's got a hope he gasses, but we haven't seen him gas. I don't think Usman's going to finish him. He's not really got the submission ability, and he might pace himself, but I do see a kind of constant forward pressure, a lot of hugging RDA on the fence, some takedowns. I see RDA getting up most of the time pretty quickly, but unless Usman absolutely gasses, I just can't see how he wins this fight. I really can't. He's not, 165 would be his ideal division. He's looked okay at welterweight. He had the 3 wins: Safadine, Magny and Lawler. Lawler probably past his best. Safadine, it's probably a good fight to make your first welterweight fight out, to try it out. But yeah, I just really can't see, now that I'm actually talking out loud, from thinking it might be a close fight, I see Usman winning this, just with that forward pressure, and I think the smaller cage is very significant here. So I see Usman winning a pretty clear decision, similar to how Colby done it. Colby was 48-47. I thought that was pretty clear. 49-46 fight. Maybe this would be a 50-45, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Usman go 5 rounds, see how that cardio holds up, because RDA always has great cardio, so it's going to be a high-paced fight. But I just can't see how he's going to beat Usman now that I'm thinking about it and saying things out loud. So yeah, I'm going to go with Usman here. I said I was going to do the Australia card on this broadcast as well. I'm not. I'm going to do this one tomorrow now. So we'll have a second one up tomorrow. I hope you've liked the first breakdown. First time I've done this, so hopefully it will improve as I go along. But yeah, as I said, Twitter at Pro MMA Betting, and if you want to check out the website, prommabetting.com, subscription packages are all available on there. And I'll get the second video up for the Australia card tomorrow. Cheers guys, thanks a lot.